Shalom, family. You know that saying, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else? That's exactly where we are as a people. We don't know where we're going, and we have ended up someplace else. And what place is that? To some of us, it's Babylon the Great. And to some of us, it's scattered throughout the four corners of the earth because we did not hearken to the voice of the Lord, our God, who is trying to lead us to the promised land. But there's still hope for the future because Jesus' hand is still stretched forth for his chosen people. But we must take a look at where we are as a people and all of the things the Lord has laid out for us, because he has prepared the table indeed in the presence of our enemies.
Running for president tells Negroes what he's going to do for them when he gets in office, and after he gets in office he has time to do something for everybody else except the people that put him in office. He tricked the people who put him in office. He has the time to take a stand against U.S. Steel, against Castro, against Khrushchev, against Laos and South Vietnam and all these other places all over the world. But when it comes to time to correcting the injustices that are being inflicted against Negroes in this country, Kennedy sits up there like Nero. He's fiddling while Birmingham is burning.
You know what's funny? Those words that Malcolm spoke still ring true to this very day. And here we are back deciding, are we going to vote again? Vote again, vote again. But yet, no matter who's in office, they still find time to do things for everybody else, but nothing for us. And that is because our God is the one that's going to provide for us. But even to this present day, Esau is even beginning to come out and say, what about the injustice for the black people, aka the children of Israel?
Hey there, my family. This is your brother Dana, and I'm coming to you from the city of Atlanta. Yes, I am both grateful and thankful that you, the United States government, have been diligently over these years working, as well as with different allies across the globe, to set free those innocent, wrongfully convicted individuals that have been rotting away in the unjust and unjust correctional system and judicial system of Russia. Thank you for setting them free. But now I need to ask you, when will you take that same diligence and those same allies and fight just as hard to release the thousands and thousands and thousands of our black brothers and sisters who have been wrongfully charged and are rotting away as innocent individuals within the unjust and unjust correctional system and judicial system of the United States of America? Yes. When will you, United States of America government, fight just as hard and work just as hard to release all of the thousands and thousands of our black brothers and sisters rotting away within the unjust or unjust correctional system of yours? When will you make justice happen?
That is a good question. When will justice come? Will it come through the system, or will it come through Jesus? Until we understand who we are and where we're going, we'll never understand anything about this system. The system was set up against us. Until we understand that, we will continue to vote and try to find a way out. Until then, Esau will begin to see that this system is set up against us for himself, and he will begin to ask the questions. Why?
Black people need to stop complaining about systemic racism and take some personal responsibility. Everyone is equal under the law now. They may be policed more, but that's only because they commit a disproportionate amount of the crime. Why? Well, I'm not saying that black people are naturally more likely to be criminals or anything. I just think it's a part of their culture. Why? Well, probably because their dads weren't around to raise them properly. Why? I don't know, probably because they were too poor to afford a kid, so they left. Why? Well, they probably can't get a good job because they never went to college. Why? Well, I guess it is probably because they couldn't afford it, but they didn't get good enough grades to get a scholarship either. Why? Well, I guess that is probably because their school is underfunded. Why? Because school funding is determined by property taxes and they were born into poor areas. Why? Because their family hasn't been able to build enough wealth to move out. Why? Because the first black people who were born with equal rights under the law are less than 60 years old.
That is a very unique observation and a very unique way to break down why we go through systematic racism. But again, until we understand who we are and where we're going, we'll never understand this system. One thing we have to know is that our Lord went before us and he laid the foundation for us to come back home. And he gave us rights and freedoms along the way, starting with the Constitution. Now let's just listen to the breakdown of how the Constitution began with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment.
After the Civil War, the South entered Reconstruction, an era marked by black representation in government. During this era, Congress passed the 13th Amendment, which legally abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, which provided citizenship to all formerly enslaved people, and the 15th Amendment, which granted black men the right to vote. This new black suffrage led to massive black political representation. 265 black delegates were included in the state constitutional conventions of 1868, more than 100 of whom had been born into slavery. Half were from South Carolina and Louisiana, where black people had a strong history of political organizing. 16 black Americans served in Congress, more than 600 were elected to state legislators, and thousands more held offices all across the South. Congress also passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and the Civil Rights Act of 1875. Despite its importance in U.S. history, the Reconstruction era is still neglected in many U.S. schools. Did you know this history?
That is a good question. Do you know the history? Do you know that we have rights according to the Constitution? God-given rights according to the Constitution. I tell you, Jesus indeed has prepared the table in the presence of our enemies. And when we know who we are, we know where we're going. And we cannot be stopped by anyone because Jesus laid the foundation for us. We just have to believe in him, trust in him, and give him our whole heart so we can indeed become the royal court of King David. But let's just listen again to the breakdown of why we're not being taught about our rights in these public schools that we should flee from immediately.
Is America a systemically racist country? 100% yes. And I never understand when the right balks at this. We tell you that the government is corrupt, that it is evil. Why do we try to push back when people say it's racist? We had institutionalized slavery in this country, followed by Jim Crow, that entrenched laws upon laws upon laws. Does that mean everybody working in our government is currently racist? No. Does that mean we still have laws on the books that were put there with racist intent or that have racially disproportionate outcomes? 100% yes. Look at the public school system, where we had redlining that determined where people lived based on their zip codes and their skin color for decades. And that now determines how much money goes to their public schools. And this is why you see black kids trapped in cycles of poverty in our government schools for decades and decades and decades.
Trapped in a system for decades, decades, and decades. Until we understand who we are, we'll never understand where we're going. And we'll keep voting and keep being taught in public schools and not learning who we are until we understand. Jesus has laid the foundation. He has given us our freedoms and our rights to come back home. Though we were sent to this land, we still was able to obtain our freedom. That's how much our Lord loves us. Beautiful people, seek the Lord while he may be found. And within that is all of your freedoms. And remember, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are the freedoms given to us by our Lord Jesus. And he wants us to come back home to where there is fullness of joy, peace, and safety. And we become the royal court of King David in Jesus' mighty name. And until then, I pray you have a wonderful and blessed day in Jesus' mighty name. Shalom, family.